recap and reflections from the GM perspective. Last night's Symbaroum game. Jason's already did a very adequate recap of the adventure. And like you said, originally I planned something else, and then life got in the way, and David had to bow out for the night. And we all never like playing without a full contingency of players and the crew, just for the company companionship, but also because the Davokar is a dangerous place, But nevertheless, it's so infrequent, like once a week that we get together, that I threw it out there. It worked with Joth before, whenever Jason and I did a little side adventure. And I said, well, we'll just back up to where we were leaving the temple at last session, and then pick up from there. And it'll be not so much there and back again, just back again. So I said, what the heck, let's do it. Let's have a little fun. So we did. And he's right. Generally, it's funny because the lore is so thick. And once you're in the world, you get a feeling for the world, and everybody around the table knows kind of what to anticipate and expect. But so it's really not that hard for kind of everybody to get in the mind and the headspace of where they're at and how to proceed. So it's really easy to kind of pick up and play. So I have them lead out. I play Bonner's NPC. And he's just as susceptible to anybody to get taken out as well as anything, So, but he was there, whether meat shield or fodder or what have you. He was there, better or worse. Nevertheless, they had the barge master Ralph Deer was going to pick up the next morning on his trek back to Thistlehold. Well, they get out of the encampment, like Jason said. They encamp at the area that get out of the temple and encamp at the area where they're going to be picked up the next morning, and set camp there. But Taro notices some tracks in the mud. Looks like it's been there for a while, and they had tread over them initially without realizing it. And it was Andric tracks, which he noticed the web printing because they had encountered these creatures before. In an earlier episode where we had to secure the Chamberlain's family. But nevertheless, sees that, and then also sees that it appeared that they were hurting some humanoids in a certain direction, like these Andrics were doing that, as far as you could judge from the prints. Did find, like I said, the cowl or the face piece, the mask of that was recognizable from Vikamir's clan, barbarian clan. Vikamir wore one himself. Well, this is broken up a bit. It wasn't bloodied by any appearance, but it was one of the horns was broken off the mask, and they kept it. The night went by without incident. Whenever Ralph Deer and company came with the barge to pick them up the next morning early, everybody was roused to get ready and pack. He wasn't necessarily in the mood to sit around and wait, as he had burning daylight, even though it was crack of dawn. He had to get to this hold. Ralph Deer, that is. They had to lower the gangplank. The sailors helped him on board. They were hired to do a little, to do their fair share and protect the barge on the way back. So it's more like, get to your stations. They set off. They did encounter, like Jason mentioned, if you watch his recap, appeared under these willows by the embankment at some point later down the river that looked like a splintered, capsized piece of a vessel that was lodged underneath the embankment. They kept going, and then there was another point where there was some kind of a shifting and rocking of the boat. They didn't discern anything immediately. Cabello went and asked Ralph Deer, what was that? Was it a sandbank? What was going on? Ralph Deer, he could tell that Ralph Deer really didn't. Well, first of all, they have a little. He's not so warmed up to him like he is because of the sister gift buying incident as before. But also, Cabela could tell that he hadn't plied these waters much because he didn't, he took it more to the front, but like he was being questioned, and certainly not by Cabello, But he didn't have a ready answer, But anyway, that's what Cabello deemed was he don't ply these waters enough to know what exactly it was. After a while, they do notice, both of them, Taro and Cabello notice, and Cabello's at the front of the boat, and Taro at the back. Taro sees a wisp of the fin of something come up beneath the glassy surface and go down. Cabello sees a stalk, essentially an eye stalk, pop up out of the depth and go back down, and goes to warn Cabello what he's seen, and behind them raise up. Now, when you're playing, and I have a crew of men, and this large crustacean has gained a foothold or multiple foothold onto the bottom of this, lashed himself to the bottom of this barge, and is going. That was, could have been the earlier movement as it was, but nevertheless, it started swiping at, and Jason was right. It's very Ray Harryhausen as you're dealing with something like this. Now, at that moment, I could see both of them. There was a turn to where Taro immediately recognizes that the size of these claws from this crustacean, he just witnessed it tear a couple of people in half and take them over the gun wall, or the side rail, down into the water like that. So when you're dealing with something like that, so he wants to run and jump, and he does. He calls for the others to do that, and so he launches himself. Cabello isn't convinced to do that just yet, and he yells for the for Bonner and Joran to halt and stay on the ground. I mean, obviously, he has a little bit of. He's been hired to protect the ship, so he's wanting to at least do his best to do that. And anyway, they did. Anybody that got any kind of contact with this creature, to put it bluntly, couldn't get past the armor soak. And any oars that were picking up or anything, it was just sliding off, and the creature was moving to where it was just taking off the crew. So the boat was rocking. By the time that Ralph Deer had found any kind of harpoon-like weaponry to stave off the attack, it was his men were deplenished, and it was near the end of the boat as it splintered from the pressure, and it had during this time been lifted up as the creature lifted the barge up in the air. So the supplies that they were carting back had broken loose and shifted and slipped off into the water, and the rear of the ship was taking water too, as it was splintering, cracking, and going under the waves, and the water was frothing. I remember at one point Cabello screamed and tried to dive toward the maw of this creature, missed abysmally, thankfully, and went down. Now, even during this, when I was rolling to see randomly who might be attacked by these claws. Bonner came up once, but he was quick enough to avoid it by a hair's breadth, literally. Now, during the multiple rolls, because this creature gets 2 attacks, whenever it strikes, they have to roll strength versus the creature's strength to see if it doesn't immediately pull them to its mouth, and then incur 2 more points of damage and 5 points of toughness for the immediate latching on to someone with his claw, and to pull it into the mandibles, and then the mandibles give you two more. The only way you can arrest that descent to the mandibles is trying with your strength to keep from being pulled. Now, when it did hit Joran on, I believe, the last roll before everybody was spilling off this boat. And so when Taro, as he had flipped over and was paddling backwards to the shore, and Cabello had already missed the creature and fallen into the water, while the creature was above Cabello, and coming down splashing, so he could have got caught in the undertow under his creature. But he made it away fast. Obviously, Bonner got shot out with the rest of the crew. Splintered wood and swirling. There's mixtures of men screaming. This vessel's going down. Then if you can envision a giant lobster, it's a sly river hunter. It overturns this barge to get on top of it as the barge goes over. But Taro sees Joran get grasped, and then Joran resists initially, but then on the second round he couldn't resist, and he gets pulled to this creature's maw, and he goes under for 2 more points. And then when you're fighting underwater, it's really dangerous. For every round, you have to roll your strength to see if you can not suffer 1 toughness damage just from suffocation and struggling in the water and everything else whatever happens, So he suffered that too. He was literally hanging at the cusp of death at 1 point more before rolled again. And any attempt at attacking is halved. So if they wasn't doing any damage to this creature to get past his armor, if you have that damage, what are you going to do underwater? You know what I mean? Your movement's restricted. This creature's can handle itself under the surface, and you can't. Very dangerous. I wanted to explore that aspect of the Davakar on the water, the river. As a little side excursion, what I initially thought of, as far as what may be fun to explore on the way back to Thistlehold. Fun, yeah, you can say that. As Jason noted, Bonner got flung off. Didn't know where he was going. Jason was trying to call to him, but it was a critical fail. And it's a matter of speaking, with the die 20. So Bonner was discombobulated. And I would like to rewind a little bit, because Bonner, even though I wasn't playing him directly, but I was playing him indirectly, I know that character and what he's been going through in his mind and what has been revealed to him recently. And so the little nuanced descriptions of his body language and his tone and demeanor was reflective of his contemplations on the future. So this situation where he gets tossed in the boat and he floats down the river and latches onto the cargo that had spilled out. After a while, he gets they lure him back to shore, go out there and basically rescue him. It looks like he's totally discombobulated and in a surreal state of unbelief and a questioning state, so to speak. Not directly, but indirectly, it looks like he had a little mature wake-up call, as it was. And I did speak of that in a moment in game. So he's not 10 foot tall and bulletproof anymore, which may be a good thing for him to learn. But they pull him to shore. They rest for the night. It's already getting near dusk. They're a little ways off from Thistlehold. They do see Cabello sees tendrils of smoke off in the distance in basically the direction that he would assume is Thistlehold. They make their way there without incident and see that the beacon, which is the forward of the tallest building in Thistlehold, this at the forward gate by the entrance of Thistlehold, facing the Navacar, that has a continual flame, is belching black sootish smoke off the top. I don't know, it was, I said there was some blackened areas around as they drew closer up to it. There's a lot of Karabatic goblins around. Some of them were being utilized and blamed for the incident, but being utilized to fix it by the soldiery, the guards, and the contingency of guards, which there's generally about 50 at any time in the city to maintain it, and 150 total on 3 shifts. There's continually overworked guards right now, of about 100 constantly in the area. And so there's a lot of attempt by the city in mere night pitch to control something. And this is what they passed through on the way and notice as the soldiers are trying to contain this. Something has happened. Whether oil was put in there, whether some kind of contaminant, whether whatever, they don't know. It didn't stop, but they had to go past it. They, on their way, they would have they passed, trying to get to give the decanter to Ansel. Getting to his apothecary, they would have passed their abode as well as the dump on the way there, just via the map. They do on the way there. They do see, vigilance checks. Jason's character does notice someone he recognizes, which is Holtz. Holtz's 2 bodyguards and another individual, which seems to be somewhat erratic and following along behind them, sort of thin and gaunt, and but it wasn't like Holtz wasn't aware of him. And he's looking down side roads or whatever, and then he disappears down a side road. Well, Taro turns around and tells Bonner to follow him, find out where he's going, what's going on in that. Bonner agrees to, and heads off. They head south. Cabello notices that through the grates in the base of the buildings, there are essentially vines coming up and clinging to the buildings and starting to head up. Not a massive quantity of them, but there are some that he took notice stood out in difference to the city. He takes notice of that, and then they go into the apothecary, look inside. The door has been left unlocked. It looks like they left there in hasty retreat. Malleus is not on the table. However, a stone is, and Taro decides to pick it up. This is a meeting stone, and when he does touch it, whoever the stone is meant for, the people will receive an awareness of the message that's left. They knew all of a sudden, because he shared the stone with Cabello, and they knew all of a sudden where to go to find to find Malleus. They pass through the main area, which has the bronze well, which is a centerpiece of the city, and the reason why the city's set there. It's been there for ages. Has inscriptions on it and whatnot. And then they finally get down to where the meeting house where they know to go. And the door's locked. Well, they realize that they got to go around to the back. And when they do, that's when they go through the gate. And it goes down a stairwell, a stone stairwell, flattens out. The sewage of the city is running parallel with it. And they can smell this somewhat unpleasant, but they travel along the ledge and then find another a dead end, But they see through a search, they find an area that they can put their fingers in and turn, uh, a device set into the wall. It clicks, unlocks, opens the door, and then they go down further, and there's a wooden door, which Ansel opens and bids them to shut the original door to stay in secret. Harries them in, and they see Malleus laying there. He's still feverish and pained, and it looks like he's gotten worsened. There is a candle, a light in the room that's giving off a certain odor that it claims arrests his descent into the sickness. There's another individual there, which is I can't recall the name now, but he's one of the followers of Father Savola. Which, when you look at Thistlehold, Savola he's almost in effect a little bit of a Martin Luther-esque figure in that he is running counter to the normal Church of Prios doctrine that's been espoused and lifted up. And the Mayor Night Pitch is okay with him being there, but the church isn't. They see him as an apostate and want to get rid of him. And essentially what he's doing is he's reaching out to the poor and destitute. And this is where it's happening. He'll run soup kitchens. He'll do what he has to do. And this young man here's a missionary for it. But he has been aware. And since he's a missionary to the Carabinic goblins and runs the soup kitchen there in Blackmore, and he had heard through the grapevine, as it were, of these murders that had been perpetrated in Blackmore and later rolled to Thistlehold, and that the finger was pointed solidly at the goblins. He wanted to find out the truth of this, which basically led him to the same location that Cabello, Taro, and Malleus ultimately, where Malleus was victimized at, was taken to by the creature, by those creatures. And there were goblins there, but it was these sightless goblins that were doing their the creature's biddings. So, and Malleus did see, of course, he can, as you know, he can speak to this. He did see the removal of the eyes of the young maiden. Why the priest and Ansel had taken Malleus to this little hidey hole, as it were, is because the guards had increased, and even though Malleus could have been, for all intent and purposes, deceased, he had been accused by a nobleman. It could be planted, but accused by the nobleman that he had been the one who was perpetrating these murders and removing the eyes. It started the session before Malleus collapsed, and when he was found out by Fritz Randall, the nobleman, he saw the young maiden have that done to her, the one that was blackmailing him, have her eyes removed by the goblin, the sightless goblin, which he had essentially run into before in one of the earlier campaigns up deep into the Davikar. But nevertheless, they see this priest had seen what was occurring with this cult below the cities and monitored it, and then saw when something went awry. And he did see, and why he knows that Malleus was to be removed, was he did see the acquisition of Malleus at the time. Now, he didn't stay there during the whole thing, but he escaped. And that's when he led back to Ansel through Savola Now, Ansel mentioned Savola to Cabello at the start of that last session I ran, and that's why he led Cabello to that area to look down. So it was through this young missionary that he got the information to Savolo and Ansel to do this, to find Malleus. So they knew that his guilt wasn't, wasn't appropriate. He was not guilty of these crimes just by, crossing paths in this manner. He's trying to alleviate any kind of threat toward these claims that the goblins, because they've been under duress, and it was evidence whenever they, even with them getting back to Thistlehold, the guards and whatnot were still claiming that the goblins had did this, as far as set the beacon, to a black smoldering soot belching machine. So anyway, that at that time, that's what he relays to them in a discussion. Gets as far, and that's when I said that Malleus, you could hear him on the other side, a table, start to rouse and get up. And Ansel tells him to lay back down and rest. But then I thought it was good to stop it right there, because Malleus was coming back into the party, and David wasn't there to represent him. So at least we got to a point to where some things are happening in Thistlehold on various levels, where they could be addressed or not. And like I said, the reason Malleus is there, they removed him from the main city as the guards were more active, and therefore, like in the last time I ran, I said that Taro had overheard some people when he was at the dump giving a description of the supposed murderer, the serial murderer, that matched Malleus's description. So at that point in time, the word had already been let loose by, now they know Fritz Randall, that Malleus is to blame. So anyway, that's why his head, that's why they needed to keep a low profile. And that's where we left it. I thought it was really good, a relaxed little session, and it was intermediary session that wasn't just, a transition or transitional narrative, but they got to come back and got to learn to that degree. So whether or not I would run it or Jason picks up, that's just where we left off. So I'm good either way. But anyway, might have went a little over long on that, but yeah, it was good. I'm trying to recollect, but it was a nice little session. Hopefully it fuels more possibilities for what is occurring. So I did forget to mention that this young priest had seen and spoke of seeing this decaying serpent-like, half mummified man serpent that was in like a process of continual decay. So he got to witness some of this, and he also stated that that Malleus had stared into the abyss, and the abyss was staring back, is what they feared. So the plantier, the orb of eyes, as it was, that the Tara had sunken his blade into. Anyway, you draw your own conclusions on that, but this is what the young priest alluded to, and whether it wants to be delved into deeper via him or Father Savala, is totally up to the next GM and the players if they want to go in that direction. Anyway, I'll let you go. Had a great time. Can't wait for the next one. Josh next week. So we're good to go. All right. Y'all take care.